And good afternoon, everybody. Today I will share the view about AI and ethics from industrial side. So there might be a bias, a slight bias in my presentation, but let's be open about it and we can discuss it later. I scheduled the talk in a way that I need roughly 30-35 minutes for the talk itself. And then I'm open to answer any questions you might have, preferably about that topic. So let's start. So right here, what we are addressing currently when talking about AI is actually the tip of the iceberg. The comprehensive use of AI in the future will have fundamental changes on our society and culture, and this is why everybody should take part in the ongoing discussion about AI and how AI might impact us. Just three elements which you could think about. For instance, most human interactions are determined not that much by laws, but more by conventions and norms and ethical norms. And how will artificial agents without moral judgment fit in that environment if they act together with us in our habitat? And you all know the discussions about eco rooms and big platforms, how they influence the way we perceive information and get information presented. And often there are AI engines behind that. So this is an example of how AI already influences our lives. And what we are experiencing now, this will lead to a shift in regulation. And you saw it in the proposal of the EU regarding the regulation, the proposed regulation of AI. And there are national endeavors currently in work. This will impact the whole industry and IT industry as well. So there are many changes currently underway, which are triggered by AI. And so this is something we should today have a deeper look into. Before I start, some words about Bosch and the Bosch Center of AI. So Bosch, it's in the vicinity of Tübingen, in the vicinity of you. Almost 400,000 employees worldwide, and more than 440 subsidiaries and 126 engineering locations worldwide, and almost 72 billion euros revenue. And the good thing about Bosch is that a large degree of that is reinvested due to the structure of Bosch with a Bosch Stiftung in research, and due to the Stiftung in welfare activities as well. So Bosch is quite, in a way, is different from other companies working in that field and in that area. And so I'm proud and glad working for Bosch. AI is a key technology for Bosch. We think that in 2025, all our products will be connected and intelligent. And for us, it's very important that AI and AI technology does not compromise our basic paradigm of invented for life. So it's like Robert Bosch, who is cited here, said that technology is thought to be helpful for people. So this invented for life is not only sort of slogan, but truly a paradigm for our product development. Bosch Center for Artificial Intelligence was funded in 2017, and I had the honor being the first sort of CEO of that endeavor, and I had the pleasure building BCAI up, and from scratch to almost 300 employees worldwide. BCAI has locations in Sunnyvale, Pittsburgh, in Renning, Tübingen, of course, Haifa, in Bangalore, and Shanghai. And we work very tightly connected with our business units to bring AI really in our products. And the BCAI has a very strong research part as well. So we not only use AI, but we work on AI and try to bring forward AI in terms of robustness and safety and explainability. And BCAI is the strongest European contributor for all top-tier AI conferences worldwide now. So this is quite an achievement we made there, and I'm quite proud of that as well. So before I came to Bosch for building up the BCAI, I worked for Deutsche Telekom. I was in the T-Labs. Before that, I was managing director of a small software company, which was eventually acquired by T-Systems. And so I moved into Telecom. And before that, I was research scientist, studied computer science, computational linguistics, and computer science in Osnabrück, and acquired my PhD there in the field of AI as well. So now let's talk about AI and the purpose of AI. So AI is hard to define, and we have here a proposal how it could be defined by the European Commission. So systems, man-made or machine-made, and given a complex goal, act in the physical or digital dimension by perceiving the environment through data acquisition, interpreting the collected structured or unstructured data, reasoning on the knowledge, processing the information derived from this data, and deciding the best actions to take to achieve the given goal. So the idea behind that is, in a rough sketch, the idea of an intelligent agent who perceives the environment, reasons about that, and then comes to actions. And now the goal of AI. Is to understand how intelligent behavior works and how it can be implemented on computer systems by means of computer science. So it's twofold. First, understanding. So this is the scientific component, how AI works per se, and then how it can be implemented on a different hardware. Intelligence we encounter so far in biological systems, but to bring it on artificial systems. So this is the engineering aspect of AI. And that they act in a way that they can be perceived as knowledgeable agents. So as agents who perceive their environment, have goals, and pursue them according to the principle of rationality. So this is the most famous sort of definition by Paul Newell, taking the paradigm and forming the paradigm of an intelligent agent here. Intelligent agents can be anything. They can be smart cars, they can be software agents also, and the underlying architecture is always similar. So they take information from the external environment by perceptive means, mostly sensors, cameras, and so on. Based on this information, they plan, And based on the planning, actions are then performed by actuators. And for the sensoric part, nowadays, mostly deep neural networks are used for interpreting sounds or discerning objects in visual data also. And for planning, either deep learning networks as well, or more traditional expert system like architectures, so statistical reasoning, decision trees also, and actuators. This is then, there are motors, engines, also crash tasks behind, and the whole system, the whole intelligent artificial agent can be distributed in a system. For instance, cameras in a highly automated car, and are important sensors for the perception, and they are in a completely different place than the engine controlling units, which control then the motor and the trajectory of the car. So this is now roughly about AI, the purpose of AI, and now is the question, what has AI to do with ethics? Because as AI was invented, people were not so much interested in that aspect, and obviously there was not so much the need for that. However, to the degree that AI influences our daily lives, this question becomes more important. First, there is the class of unintended, unethical behavior. And this is, you could say, bloody thoughtlessness. For instance, in early versions of Siri or Hey Google, it was possible if people said, oh, I'm fed up, I will end my life, I jump from a bridge, that then the smart assistant provided helpful hints where the next bridge fitted to that purpose could be. This is at least a bit of not very thoughtful behavior, or you could even say unethical behavior. Or, for instance, unreliable translating software with gender bias in data. So there was a famous example: if you translated sentences from English to Turkish and then vice versa, the semantics of the sentences could change. So like, he is nice, she is smart, he's a nurse, she is a doctor. And out came, she is beautiful, he is smart, she's a nurse, and he's a doctor. So those are examples of unintended, unethical behavior. Unethical in the sense that it doesn't, that it hurts expectations, how we would like each other or systems or intelligent agents to behave. This is something which is can be controlled more easily. So, for instance, if you try now with a recent version of a voice assistant, this example of jumping from a bridge, this won't work anymore, because people search now actively for such examples, for such sentences, and prevent it. And there are other processes now in place which double check whether there might be hidden bias in, especially gender bias in data and data processing. More difficult is the class of intended unethical behavior. So, for instance, take deep fakes. So deepfakes can influence the way how we perceive information and how we shape our notion and our mental image of reality. There was an so-called kleine Anfrage an den Bundestag regarding deepfakes, whether they can they can influence the way that we perceive information, and whether this can have effects on the way we perceive politics, and that the behavior during elections can be influenced by that. And we'll read here the answer. So it cannot be excluded that there will be threats to the democratic processes by deepfakes in future. So this definitely is something we should be careful about. In general, behavior and decision-taking are vital. Some examples here, you see it on the left-hand side, in the trajectory planning of a highly automated car. There are always things to be decided regarding the environment. So the car has to, so to say, to take decisions, what's the road, what belongs to the road, what not. And he should be aware of pedestrians in the street and on the pavement, on road signs, should plan for obstacles, for avoiding obstacles, and for other participants in the traffic, for other cars, for cyclists, and so on. So in every millisecond, decisions are to be made, and those decisions are vital for the whole environment the car moves in. And on the right-hand side, you see some benign applications, the drones where AI can be used for self-stabilizing, a social robot which can be applied for caring tasks also. However, there are more serious examples of highly automated weapons, for instance, which incorporate a lot of AI and which clearly are dangerous. So this is I won't go more into details about that kind of application of AI. However, society was not successful in putting a general ban on lethal autonomous weapons. And so this is a different flavor of AI, which we should be aware that there is something like that. And this is an extreme point, but so these extreme points are good anchor points for discussions as well, and to discuss what kind of decisions should be delegated to systems and what better not. So behavior and decision taking are vital, and so far it could be done only by people and now by machines as well. And this is why ethics comes into play. So the Dobrindt Commission, Dobrindt was Secretary of State for Traffic, and they had a commission about the ethical considerations about highly automated driving. So what kind of decisions should be machines be allowed to draw? And the commission came to the to the decision that no decisions which require major moral judgment should be taken by machines. That is, all kind of ethical considerations where value-based decisions play a role should not be done and must not be done by machines. And this is, I think, it's a very realistic point of view, because as we have not understood properly how moral judgment forms and how it works with humans, as we have not understood that, we cannot emulate this process on different kind of hardware, on machines. We know that people normally have acquired this moral judgment by human interaction until the age of 18. If not, then society comes with regulations. But how should we do that with AI? So when those processes cannot be emulated, so who should be then in charge? Who should be responsible for the decisions taken by an AI agent? From engineering point of view, we can differentiate 5 levels of autonomy, which equal more or less degrees of freedom. So, what can a system decide and what not? So the first level is basically that all the knowledge which is incorporated in a system has been implemented by the programmer itself. So here, basically, the responsibility to the behavior should lie with the developer of the system. The next stage is that a machine can learn and adapt, but works still on the given domain model, which has been implemented at the very beginning. So some degrees of freedom are given due to sensoric input or so, but by and large, it follows a very clear structure. The third level, where the machine correlates internal domain model with sensory perception and information, is now a level where, for instance, robotics comes into play, like household robotics, like Roomba and similar, or Lego robots also. Those are instances of machines that are fitted with an internal domain model. However, this is then enriched with sensory perception and information. At that level, a flat ethical and simple ethical behavior could be modeled according to decision logic with a utility function in a relationship to the given task. The fourth level is more sophisticated. Here, the machine operates on a world model as perceived by sensors. So, the knowledge about the domain and the world is acquired by the own perceptive means of the system. And here, to give more degree of giving more degree of self-awareness could result in more stability and resilience for the system. So you even could then talk about a very, very simple consciousness. And here it's thinkable that we give such system a very simple deontic ethical model to follow. If we, and the most sophisticated machines today are on level 4. If you think in the future that a machine could operate on a complete own world model, and where to understand rules and conventions in a given world segment, this then were to require the capability of full moral judgment, and which requires higher order reasoning some second order logics, model logics or so, which are as a property undecidable in a non-trivial context. So today we do not see from engineering point of view how this could be managed at all. It's a very interesting research question, but for today we have to assume that there is no clear path from where we stand with AI research and this fifth level, and so it's reasonable to say that for the time being, ethical decisions should not be taken by an AI system. As it is about acting and behaving, and ethics is about that, the question arises, how, if the machines cannot develop an own ethical judgment, how can then high-level ethical goals and standards be implemented and made actionable by the machines? I have to shorten this a little bit because due to the stunt with keynotes, we are running out of time, and so I will have to compress my talk a little bit. And I will not go into details here about the how we could create a universal reference system for values. You can just think of for poles, system, an ethical system can be relative, absolute. It could be local or universal, and in that field, you can fill in any ethical reference system, starting from the 10 Commandments to value ethics, Epicure, Shintoismus, and here relate them. And similarly, you could do that with ethical codices of companies. I have done that in the past, and there are now some papers on that as well, which compare the gist of ethical codices of companies. And this is an interesting discussion, but for another day, I'm afraid. The question why companies invest in ethical codices is quite obvious, because we have to deal with the situation that we have intelligent agents which are not aware of the conventions and ethical standards. However, we have to we have laws about product liability and so-called Herstellerhaftung, which does not take those dynamic systems into account. And so when we want to shape the future and want to bring in intelligence products into the market, we have to find the means how to do it in a safe and acceptable way. And so the quest for how this can be done in an acceptable way, it took already several years, and the EU Commission funded a high-level expert group that was expected to consult the Commission. And I had been a member of this group as well. The idea was that a framework for trustworthy AI was to develop, and a framework which were then to be acceptable for society. And core ingredients for trustworthy AI is it must be lawful, it should be ethical and robust. And in this group, we came up with 7 dimensions and key requirements for trustworthiness, like transparency, privacy and data governance, accountability, so that you always know who's responsible for something, societal and environmental well-being, human agency and oversight, so that people still are in the center of decisions. And of course, diversity and non-discrimination, which is addressing bias in data and robustness and safety, of course. So the general idea is that if those requirements are fulfilled by a system, this will result in a system which is accepted and considered to be trustworthy. As I mentioned before, we came up with our own codex of AI because we have certain values. And one of our core values is that technology should be for people, invented for life. And this is why in our codex, it's the core idea is that AI systems should not decide about humans, but humans should always be in the position to control AI. And we defined three categories here. There are, for instance, systems where AI is used to consult people, and like in the navigation system, but the human is all the time in command. So this is human in command. There is another category, human in the loop, that is, for instance, in an intelligent, in assisted driving, a parking assistant. Yeah, you can accept the proposal of the park assistant and let the agent park the car for you, or you could override the decisions and control the car yourself. So, but you are always in the loop and can take actions. And then there is a third category, which is more critical. This is when, due to the time criticality, decisions actually have to be transferred to the AI system, like, for instance, in emergency braking situations or so. Then this is something the system should do by itself, and there is no time to ask the user for input. However, ex post, should humans be part of that system engineering and decide which are the parameters based on which the system comes then to a decision. And ex post, it should be possible to check and test that. We got a very positive echo and feedback from this codex, and so that we decided now to make it operational and implement it in our software process, in our software building processes. And not only that, but to ask our suppliers to, if they deliver AI software to us, that they stick to the same rules as we do. So still, this sounds good, but there are underlying challenges which we have not solved yet, and which will be important for the discussion in the next month and years. So first of all, we have to understand that AI is, from the engineering and IT perspective, just a thin application layer which resides on the IT stack. And it brings with it a paradigm change in system development. So we do not develop and program AI systems, but we train them. And those trained systems often interact with traditional IT systems and very complex IT systems. Today, the state of security in IT systems is often remains, it's often not ideal, let me put it that way. Yeah, already years ago, experts said said that our systems are unsecurable, indefensible, or that the situation is just hopeless. And putting then AI on top of those systems is sometimes critical. Yeah? So utilizing AI means that we have to secure the underlying IT stack as well. Otherwise, all functions we think of mitigating the risks of AI could be bypassed. And AI itself requires additional research. So that we understand better the decision logic behind deep neural networks, for instance. So how they in detail are functioning is not always understood. And here we need tools to make that more transparent and explain that better. And transferring, often models are transferred to other application areas. And this does not work always well, sometimes, but not always. And the processes behind that, when it does work well and when not, are not completely understood as well. So this transfer learning is something which is has to be understood better as well. And this is a very active research field currently. Last point, sophisticated AI does not come for free. So so there will be a divide in companies and organizations utilizing AI and others who cannot, because non-trivial, highly sophisticated AI is really expensive. Take this AlphaGo example, where several years ago, Google built an engine which could beat human player of the very complex game of Go. However, what they had to invest in that is tremendous. Now, for a 40-day training, it costs roughly 21 million, and it consumed the energy of 32 households in Germany, the annual consumption just for that training. Yeah, and this is most impressive, and but it's a clear example of not everybody can do that. So AI per se is not a democratic technology. It needs a lot of resources. And when personal computer were introduced, you see here on the left upper side a picture taken from Apple's famous Super Bowl advert when they advertised their personal computer so that everybody could have computational power at their fingertips. Things moved clearly away from that, and from the prevailing paradigm now in computation, from a cloud-based computation. This definitely is something which is not available for everybody, and this will impact the kind of systems we will have in future as well. So, but we should, of course, take the challenge. And you might know Werner von Braun. He is a difficult character, but he once said, the problem of our time is not so much the greater power given to man by technology as the lack of effective control over the abuse of this power. And this holds true exactly for AI as well. So AI is an incredible, powerful technology which could help us to solve really complex problems. However, it can be used for wrong purposes as well. And as I said, as it's not purely democratic, so it's important to control the use of this technology as well. or setting standards to to hinder the misuse of it. And this is why we invest a lot to move AI towards digital trust and trustworthy AI. And we think that the development of and implementation of safe, secure, and robust AI is for Bosch essential, because we do not want to let AI interfere with our invented for life paradigm and principle. And we think that as a society, we have to define a framework for digital trust, where we set up the rules of the game, how we can use AI, how we can use make use of these great possibilities, and at the same time keep the difficult aspects clearly in check. So, as I said at the very beginning, we are addressing just the tip of the iceberg.